afternoon, students. I'm going to talk to you today about forests and fisheries. That's where we're going today. So, our nice unit in natural resources and sustainability. And so, we're going to talk about forests and fisheries. Okay. So, with that said, what is a fishery? So, let's start with fisheries first. Okay. So, lesson 4 is what we're in, and what is a fishery? So, a fishery is an area with large populations of valuable or ocean organisms. Okay. Another definition, however, because we do hear about fish hatcheries, sometimes a fishery can also be something or someone engaged in raising or harvesting fish. It's a stretch, but a fishery can also be known as that. So the fish hatchery, which is where we plan to do a field trip, is a place for artificial breeding. So to kind of create a similar environment as a fishery, where you are either breeding, you are hatching, you are I'm forgetting the other word, but you're raising fish, you're growing them, and so these are examples of different fisheries. Here in the top left is a nice picture of a natural fishery, right? These are all salmon trying to come in from the ocean to lay their eggs. And then here's an artificial. This is a fish hatchery. So this is where here's another example of a fish hatchery where there are lots of different pools. And sometimes, as we'll learn, the fish hatcheries have different pools of different ages, different kind of things happening within the life cycle of a fish. And so there are often lots of different pools, and we'll talk about those in a moment. And then here, of course, if this fishing boat was able to catch this many fish, it was clearly fishing in a fishery, is the way that you could say it. Okay, so different images of fisheries. Okay, as humans, we thought that we had an infinite supply. We had endless supply of fish. And as it turns out, we did for a long, long time, until we started to catch our fish faster than they can have babies, faster than they can breed. And so what that means is that the population is decreasing. And the way that we call this problem, or this kind of imbalance, is called overfishing. So the definition of overfishing, okay, is defined as when fish are caught faster than they can breed and the population is decreasing. Okay, and so I have this very, this is the super trawler that we talked about. This is Greenpeace, so this tells you that I'm a little biased. But these are the ones that have been banned. They were on the coast of Japan and on the coast of Australia. This is that video that I showed you in class of the super trawler just bringing up this endless net filled with fish. Here's another image off the side of the boat of a super trawler. I thought that this was interesting, that I don't know how skewed this is. I haven't checked, but the idea is that 13 jumbo jets, so the planes that we use to fly across the country, can fit in just one of these nets. Okay, so clearly, as technology has advanced and as humans have figured out bigger and better ways to fish, we are starting to overfish the oceans. And in fact, this 70% is saying that 70% of the world's fisheries, so of the world's fisheries, are at this point overfished. Okay, they have been overfished at this point. So a little concerning. 70% of the entire world's fisheries are overfished. That's a little bit of a problem. Okay, so what are we doing? What are humans doing to have fishing be more sustainable? What are we doing to make sure that we have fish for the future and for all of our children? Okay, so here are all, so let's talk about, I'm going to give you 4 things. So the first change that we've made to make fishing a little bit more sustainable is fishing limits. And being in Vermont, we often hear about hunting seasons. We also hear about like limits on hunting. You can only get one we just heard the other day that that a hunter, each person who has a deer license, can only get like a 4-point or a 2-point buck. Is the type that they can hunt. I don't know. And so that's similar. There are size limits. If you're a fisher person, you know that that there are size limits. You can't catch a fish, certain types of fish, under 6 inches or 8 inches. I'm not sure. So we limit the size of the fish that can caught. There are also policies when you get your fisher's license, knowing that you can only catch a certain number of fish that you can catch. So there's a certain, caught. So you can only catch a certain number of fish, like 10 salmon per person, whatever it is, per season, whatever that is. And then we also actually just all out ban areas. So you cannot fish in areas is what banning areas means, where severe overfishing has occurred. Okay, and the reason why we ban it, we're just for a period of time, we are not allowed to fish in areas where overfishing has occurred to allow the populations to bounce back. So we kind of set it aside and say, don't go here until the populations are really thriving again. And then, of course, you can go back, but give them a break is kind of the way, the thinking behind that. The second type of change that we've made to make fishing more sustainable is we have changed our fishing methods. And so our fishing methods, what we're doing, one thing is the nets that we use for fishing, so more like professional fishers, fishing boats, whatever it is. The nets have larger mesh nets, larger mesh, like the holes are, like, instead of it being like this close together, the holes, it's now this close together, right, the holes. The size of the hole. And the reason why we do that is that so the babies can get out, or the immature fish can get out, so they can still swim right out of there. And so they aren't caught up. You've seen that in Nemo, I think. We've also outlawed certain types of fishing. Fishing practices. So the super trawler, that picture that I had, is one that we've kind of outlawed. We've said enough. Like that's overfishing. That will not. That's not sustainable fishing practice. So some of the other ones, just the more individual outlawed type of fishing, is actually using dynamite. I saw this in a movie. I'd never seen it before. It's Crocodile Dundee 2, or Dundee 2. It's one of my favorite movies growing up. But using dynamite, he threw this in like the New York harbor or something like that. So you light the dynamite, you put it in the water, and it explodes, and it stuns the fish. So it doesn't kill them, but it stuns them. And it stuns all types of fish. And so in this movie, all these big fish kind of floated up to the top because they were in shock. And so he just, fished with his hand. It was amazing. But anyways, another type that we do is we have been known as humans to poison certain regions. We add a little cyanide to the water, and so the fish just come right up and out because they die because we've poisoned them. Awesome job, nice one. Okay, so those are some other changes that we've made. A third change that we've made is we've started these fish hatcheries, which is also known as, another way to say this is aquaculture. That was cool. Aquaculture. So we are farming certain fish now. So there are farms where they produce salmon instead of corn or instead of soybean or whatever. So we are farming certain fish. Some examples would be salmon. So at the grocery store, you can get wild salmon or you can get farm salmon. So that's an option. Catfish is another popular one. We also do shrimp. I did not know this. This is something that I recently learned. And then tilapia. I think I'm spelling this wrong. Tilapia is another one that is being pushed on us a little bit, but it's easy to fish and it's easy to farm. And so this is one that you probably have had put on your plate numerous times, just because it's the price is right and it's much easier and much more sustainable. Okay, there can be negatives in fish hatcheries, and this is something that we'll talk about maybe after we go to the fish hatchery as analysis. But there are some negatives, and part of that is the cost. So it costs a lot to farm fish, and sometimes the payoff is not there. The last one that I alluded to with that tilapia is that we're trying to just broaden human tastes, that so we don't overfish just one type. So broaden the human palate, meaning like everybody loves salmon, right? But what about all the other fish? There's lots of other ones. I think we eat as a human race. We eat about 90 different species in general. Those are our most popular ones. 90 different species of fish. Sorry, but an average human across the world, not just in the United States, half of their animal protein comes from fish. So you know, if that one fish is all the same, if we all just focus on one species, of course we're going to create a little extinction issue there. So broadening our likes and dislikes will help the fish culture as well. Okay, so moving right along to forests. Let's see, I don't have to watch this for too long. Let's talk about forests and what are the different kind of concepts that we have to think about here. So when you think about, especially here being from Vermont, an intact tree, meaning that a tree that is not cut down, okay? When we think about what forests provide for humans and other organisms, intact trees, I have a huge list of this, and you can add to your list too. They provide syrup, of course, right? Syrup / sugar, which is a big one. They provide rubber. We don't have to cut down trees in order to get rubber from them. They provide nuts and fruit. Intact trees also provide medicine a lot of the time. They provide oxygen. They do that whole recycling of our carbon emissions, which is important. They prevent soil erosion by having a tree in the roots there. If it rains, the soil isn't necessarily going to go sliding off the hill or off whatever slant it's on. It will usually stay there because it's packed in there, which then also they prevent flooding. Okay, so intact trees do all of these things and more. And then cut down trees in general, they give us paper, which is a huge need, right? You're writing on paper right now. They also give us lumber, and that lumber can be used for houses, for shelter, for furniture. I'm sitting on a very hard chair right now. And then also cutting down trees, not a cut tree, but cutting down trees provides space for our population to continue to grow. So to build a house in that space. So in general, forests provide a lot. I would say that this one doesn't really belong in this category, but as far as providing for humans and other organisms, but all different things to think about. So we can use intact trees, but we can also use cut down trees, and we use them a lot. Okay, very important. One cool statistic that I got, 1/3 of the United States is covered in forests. Okay, so just about a little, I think, under or over 1/3 is covered in forests. And some of those forests are owned by, obviously, they're parks. Okay, so the government owns some of them, a lot of them. Individuals also own a ton. So just if you have a forest in your backyard or if you have a big forest in your thing, so individuals. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about my spelling right now, but that says individuals. And then lastly, lumber companies. Lumber and paper companies also have bought up huge forests. So lumber and paper companies also own some of that 1/3 of the United States that is covered. One other interesting aspect is that forests in general provide 1.5 million jobs for people in the United States. So talk about important, right? Forests are fairly crucial for 1.5 million people out there in the United States. Okay, so all things to think about as well. Okay, a forest is known as a renewable resource because we can plant them to replace them. So we can replace a renewable resource with something that is replaceable, and so we can do that. Okay, there are two ways that that we can cut trees down too, and so this sometimes has a perspective on. I'm sorry. So there are two types of logging methods. Number one, clear cutting. So we can clear cut an area, which really means just cutting down all the trees in an area at once. And then there's selective cutting, which is cutting down only some trees in a forest, leaving a mixture of tree sizes, meaning kind of tree ages, your sapling versus your really big one, versus your very mature tree, and then leaving lots of different species standing. So selective cutting and clear cutting are the two types of logging methods, and let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both. And here's also an image of the two. So this is clear cutting. So this is a forest that's intact. This is the side that has been clear cut. So all of the forest is gone. Clear cutting is frankly a lot quicker and cheaper for most of the time once it's kind of begun for loggers. It's sometimes even safer for loggers because they don't have to worry about other trees potentially, or whatever, all of those things, but other trees fine. A disadvantage, so these were advantages. A disadvantage is an ecosystem is 100% disruptive, right? Disrupted. All the animals that lived here no longer have shelter, they no longer have food, there's nothing available for them to live on. It's kind of like that example of the tundra versus a rainforest, right? It's absolutely disrupts an ecosystem. And then another disadvantage is that soil erosion that we talked about before. The soil is, if the wind comes whipping through here, right, the soil can be blown, it can be washed away. All the nutrients can go into the pond here, or this lake, whatever it is. The amount of, so talk about changes that can occur here. It can really harm the organisms here. It could get less deep, right? Because you have all the soil going in here, all of those things. So there's a ton of issues there. Selective cutting is usually less disruptive. Here's an example. Here's a tree taken, tree, right? Still is open. It's more open than it was before, but it's less disruptive to an ecosystem. And then the disadvantage is it's sometimes harder for loggers to move through something like this. Like, how are they going to get their huge truck through here? So it's harder for them to move their equipment through. And do I have anything else I wanted to talk to you guys about? And then I think just the only other thing is sustainable forestry. So I don't know where I can write this, but sustainable forestry is known as somebody that is practicing sustainable forestry. Sorry, I'm writing over this. Plants a tree for every one they cut down. And that's, how can that not be sustainable, right? If you cut this down, you plant a tree right next to it and you let it grow, right? So every tree, so you aren't changing the population of trees. You may be changing the demographics, right? It may be a younger forest, whatever it is, but that's sustainable forestry. And then you can actually buy, like if you're really into this and you're somebody who uses wood all the time for furniture, for whatever it is, for paper, you can buy certified wood. And what certified is like a stamp that's on it. and or on the packaging. Certified wood means that it comes from a company that practices sustainable forestry, which is neat. Okay, have an excellent day, and I will, I'm sure, be seeing you really soon.